help me lead the Q&A segment as well. Have you ever met a diamond in the rough? If not, our next guest and presenter invites you to church to experience firsthand what it's like to be a diamond in the rough and her two-part series, Diamond in the Rough, Part 1 and 2, published with Toronto's Kaya Publishing. Kamilah Haywood carefully brings this fictional tale of Diamond and couples it with an intense look at the social issues surrounding the prison system, the women who reside within it, Diamond's mental health, drug abuse, mistreatment, and how each circumstance have led her to use her imagination, patience, and inner strength to navigate this harsh system. Kamilah's love for storytelling and inspirational narratives has brought her to serve as a music manager, event coordinator, and project manager in Toronto. Please help me welcome Toronto's urban fictional mastermind, the co-host and founder of the online church live show, co-founder of War Productions and Toronto Urban Book Expo Board of Directors member, Kamilah Haywood.
What's going on? Hi everybody. Thank you for having me. Big up everybody. Jameel, Stacey, Mutendei for the amazing presentation, and of course, Stacey Kaya Publishing. Thank you everybody for having me today.
You're very much welcome. We are very much welcome. So Kamilah, now that we have you here, would you like to introduce a first question for our guest, one of our presenters?
Yes, I actually do. I have a question for both of you guys, actually. When it comes to writing and experiences, I see that you guys both had two different perspectives. And when I was listening to both your presentations, I noticed that with Jameel, he was touching on the character and the history. And then with Stacey, you were more so touching on the healing. Do you find that somebody's situation, like for example, if we were to touch like an at-risk youth that becomes a product of their environment, do you, especially like the Black youth of today, do you feel that they shouldn't be telling their stories, even if it's gang violence, drugs, money? Or do you feel that because that's the conditions they've grown in, they should still tell that story?
I think they should, because I grew up on hip hop. That's what hip hop is.
Yeah.
It's a painting or picture of those harsh, tough conditions, and we need to know those conditions. Like, everybody's story is valid, and what I was trying to indicate, we need to see a diversity of our stories. But because the violent content sells easier, because it's more sensational, you have these powers that be that almost manipulate that aspect of our story and then boxes us into telling our narratives in this one way when we're multidimensional like everybody else, and so is our stories. So I think we need to see more diversity of stories from people of color. It's important.
I agree. Thank you. Thank you.
I have the same opinion as Stacey. To me, it's more not so much what story you're telling, but how you tell it, and what's your motivation to tell it. Are you doing it for therapy? Are you doing it to be a lesson for other people coming behind you? Do you want to raise social awareness about this particular thing? The Native American lady I mentioned, Maria Campbell, her book Half Breed, talks about the problems of being Métis, being half white and half Indian, and then obviously the economic situations they lived in. So that's a good example. And forgive me for being so bad with names today. There is a Torontonian that I met that also went through a similar situation that you mentioned. He was a basketball star, was supposed to get a scholarship, and then certain things happened, some bad choices. He ended up spending some time incarcerated. Then he came out, but he was able to reconnect with the basketball community, become a positive role model, and he's currently working with the Toronto Raptors, if I've kept up to date. The name will come back to me, and then I'll let you know, but it's escaped me for the moment. He's an author as well, so yeah.
Nice.
Cool. So I do have a question, and pretty much anyone can answer. So there's a huge barrier between Black Americans, Koreans, and Africans. And that's due to the misrepresentation of media. So it's a mouthful. So because of mainstream media, Media does a poor representation of Blacks, causing many of our brothers and sisters on the continent of Africa and the Caribbeans to disown us by stating things such as, we have forgotten where we come from. So with that being said, how must a lost culture who happens to be Black Americans find or discover their lost culture? Or if not, how can we restore our connection with our brothers and sisters in Africa and the Caribbeans? In other words, how do we find our connection to the motherland without being harmed by our own kind?
That's deep, Jameel.
Jameel
going deep,
right?
Sorry.
It's actually an amazing question. I wouldn't mind to start to answer. I think the journey is definitely something that starts with self. You need to be aware of yourself. I know from personal experience, until I actually started to do the journey within myself, I wasn't able to embrace any culture. Whether it was being Canadian, Jamaican, African, nothing. You need to have a journey with yourself first before you can embrace anything else. And I think that's where a lot of the disconnect has come, because we've been programmed and brainwashed as a oppressed race to see things a certain way. And until you can start to identify and see your path in your journey, you are always going to look at things as divide and conquer, which is what they've done to our race, to continue to keep it oppressed, to continue to keep the Americans there, the Canadians there, the Africans there, the Caribbeans there. They just split us apart. It was divide and conquer. That was the game, right? So, and I think that now that if you look at the evolution collectively, you hear people talking about inner work and spirituality, and they're doing this divine work, and it's actually starting to unite people. It's uniting our race, and that is, like, I think the journey with self is where it needs to start.
Thank you, Kamilah.
You're welcome.
Let me add to that. So, yes, I agree. It's first and foremost, as Kamilah mentioned, it's a journey of self. But at some point, we have to jump into the deep end, not to discount anything Kamilah said. No. Jameel, you had mentioned that there's a feeling that, if I heard you correctly, that Africans have towards Black Americans as being, have the attitude that they're lost. However, I think that the actual problem is with Africans more than Black Americans in that sense of building relations, in terms of economic standing, having a cultural standing. I'll again go back to the example of Ghana, right? So Ghana has been able to welcome Black Americans back home, give them beneficial treatment and initiatives in terms of investment, citizenship, and welcome them from a culturally basis. Now, the problem that stands in the way of this, because there has been attempts noted through history, Marcus Garvey and W. Du Bois. The problem that stands in the way is the existing political structures, political leadership. So if you're going to try and create unity, you have to do it through communities. You have to forget about the political leadership, whether it's in America, here in Kenya, or elsewhere. Obviously, with some countries like Ghana being an exception, and you have to do it with community basis. So if you, for example, know, because there are a lot of exchange students, so if you know anyone who was a student coming from Africa or from the West Indies, how can you then build a community engagement with them? Kind of like what we're doing here right now. Can you talk to them about investment opportunities? Can you create a investment company that just deals with someone you know and trust as a representative of their community, right? Rather than trying to go through official challenges which are affected by corruption and a lot of double dealing and all that stuff. Yeah.
And that's definitely just to go back to that, to state that all starts with self. If you were to give those responsibilities to people that don't know themselves and are lost and are a product of the environment, it's going to crumble right in their hands. Then to give it to people that have done the healing, have done the work of the oppression and the products that we've lived in for years upon years, they're going to do the same thing that these people have done and corrupted it and make it toxic, which is what we continue to watch. So that's back to what you're saying. I think your step is the next step. And I think the self is where it needs to start. Because a lot of people, if you, not a lot, but we always talk about, oh, this Black person did this, bad mind, this, they don't know themselves. They've become a product. So how do you not become the product? How do you need to look in the mirror and figure out what you need to heal?
Just to add to that briefly, and agree with everything you're saying and everything Mutendei said, it's like a connecting the dot exercise where like you have to go back in time and be like, wait a second, there's certain foods in West Africa that in my kitchen where I was raised by Jamaican parents, we do that. There's certain dances we still do. Where does that come from? So that is that self-discovery, but then connecting the dots, pulling those pieces together and stepping outside of the political structures that divide us and taking that community engagement piece and revisit what Garvey, laid out in the blueprint. Like there's a blueprint. So it's about following the blueprint and seeing how can this best be implemented and how can we learn from the mistakes of the past and try to do things better for not just our generation, but future generation and teaching them. And the earlier the futures and the younger people know these things and these challenges and they can navigate and hopefully get further ahead.
Thank you all. Thank you. I thought it was I know it's a heavy question, but this is, and I'm just not speaking this from myself. I'm just speaking from what I observed through my own observations, even from, coming over to Toronto and being a part of the Caribbean Festival, even working alongside of Africans who come over to the Americas to work, and it's just a lot. So I just see it, and I just wanted to know, how can we, try to work to restore that connection? Because I know me personally, like you said, it started with self first. So I know how to figure out where I come from in order to know where I'm headed. And then, like you said, remove myself from the political barriers and structures that's in place to make me angry against a Black woman or make a Black woman angry against me, or the geographic locations, the division and the conquer is what I would call it. So I was just asking for those people who may be curious about that, because like you said earlier, Mutendei, there's a misrepresentation and character in media and historical context. So, and it's important that we don't buy into the hype, because everything on the news and the media is made to hinder our growth and our connection with each other. So thank you for that. We have a question in the chat box. Go ahead. Sorry, Mutendei.
I just want to add one point, and this is a kind of like a conceptual theory I'm still trying to develop. Because if you look at Asian Indians and then Indians, if I categorize them that way, not the Native American ones, but the ones from the Far East, right? They, regardless of their upbringing, regardless of where they found themselves geographically, if they're brought over to Canada or Africa to build the railways, they maintained their traditional language. Now, I think Africans are guilty of this as well. One of the problems, based on this theory, that Africans and Black Americans have is that we're not operating on our own frequency, which is your traditional language or an African language. And I myself have been struggling to learn my own traditional language, which is one of the things I hope to do this year. That if you are, and this is one where what Ghana is doing is so commendable. If you're actually able to learn an African language, there's a cultural mindset that comes with that. So it'll kind of give you an open mind, a different way of relating to people, because you can't really learn the language without learning some of the cultural attachments that go with it, whether it's French, German, or any other kind of language. So that's one of the things that I think that can be used to address it. And then it gives you another point of relatability, right? Because then if you're Black American or if you're from the Caribbean, but you're from Africa like me, you're both trying to learn the same language, it eliminates that geographical difference. So that can be
Makes
one
sense.
possible solution.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks for sharing that. And I know it's my goal to, once this pandemic precedes us, so we can, make a trip to Ghana, Kenya.
Right.
I would love to, touch foot on African soil. I don't even really care just to be over there to have that connection and connect with the culture. So
yeah, the
definitely
energy and
appreciate
everything.
that. So we have a question in the chat box. It's from Tanisha Glover, and I believe I think Stacey, you can answer.
Yes, it is about co-authoring. Tanisha's asking, she has questions about co-authoring. How does the process work when you are publishing with multiple authors, and what's the best way to allocate tasks? So I had the privilege of working with someone in the community Randy Goodman's her name. She's also a realtor. She's known in the community for being a person who can put together a compilation of stories. So she found the editor and had people who designed the book cover. We each just had to submit our chapter to the editor and work closely with the editor who went back and forth with each of us. Her vision was to have 365 stories, but she got to almost 365. So I think she was biting more than she could chew, to be honest, but she's done this before. It's an international bestseller, this book, and her other books have been bestsellers. But in terms of the funding, like the proceeds, like you pay a fee to be in this book. So that can sometimes be cheaper than doing a book yourself from start to finish. And so that might be a good entry point for somebody who wants to be an author for the first time, or they have a very busy life and they're trying to balance work and being an author. So it's a good starting point. But once you pay this fee, you only get the money for the physical books you sell, because the way the online system works with the print on demand, she's not distributing the sale to like over 300 people. So we kind of signed up for that in the agreement. But once I physically ordered physical books and I'm hosting an event, somebody buys it for me, I keep 100% of that. So that was the proceed, which the agreement, which I think worked fine for me. And everybody has a different program in terms of co-authoring, but there are people who have these as like a program and you just work with them. So I hope that helps,
Great.
Tanisha.
I have a comment. The idea that Mutendei gave about learning the language, I had the opportunity to visit Ghana twice.
Oh.
And the first time, I would say, this was back in 2009, when I landed and walked in, I saw everybody who looked just like me with the dark skin. The majority of people, dark skin, they look like me. I felt like I belonged. I felt like I belonged for the first time in my life. Even though I grew up in Trinidad, there, the population is so-called multicultural. But I actually felt like I belonged in Ghana, which was the first time in my life that I felt I belonged somewhere, a deep sense of belonging. And then the thinking of the food and practices. I brought this to show you all. Now in Trinidad, we call this a coquier broom. And it's made from the spines of the coconut leaves.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Wow.
And I remember in the countryside in Trinidad, people using this to sweep up the garden, sweep up the leaves in the yard. And we call it a coquier broom.
Wow.
Up in Ghana, almost every household has a coquier broom.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes, it is.
When I looked at it, I said, wait a minute, that's where we got it from in the Caribbean.
Exactly.
That's where we got it from, okay?
Wow.
Absolutely amazing.
There's one person on the call here from Barbados.
Wow.
I know Barbados is famous for cuckoo and callaloo. Yes. And in Ghana, they have the couscous.
Yes.
Right? And when it's done, it looks like a bowl of cuckoo. And so eating it's fufu. Fufu, they call it, sorry. But it looks just like a bowl of cuckoo from Barbados. So, there are so many similarities in the food and cultural practices, but the language, it didn't know how to communicate with people. And many people speak English, but they have so many languages. And so if we can really learn a language, it would help so much just to, to just further feel a sense of belonging. So just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you. Now I really got to go to Ghana.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Kamilah, would you like to introduce the next question that we have there?
I actually wanted to know if anybody else has any questions. You know, we have some people international that are in here. I would love to hear from.
I think it's one in the chat box. I'm not sure who it's from. Oh, Tanisha again.
Okay, well, I'm gonna ask a question to Stacey. My question for you is, when you were doing the research for your presentation, and you found out about how the writing was in slavery, what difference, like, obviously we know with slavery, they had harsher conditions. Being a Black female Canadian author, where do you see the barriers here that you're experiencing?
The barriers here, I guess, because I always say it's a numbers game in Canada. We don't have the population in terms of, there's not enough of us where we exist in the outlets to get your story, right? So for someone like me to get on the news that we have here, it's not as easy as if I was in the Caribbean, where there's a lot of people who look like me who are at the news station. I could just call them and they put me on the news. I don't have those kind of connections. So getting your story to the masses is very challenging. And so I've had to do the grassroots thing. So when I read that how David Walker sewed his manuscript, like in the clothing, like, that's creative, but he also did it because he had to protect what he was doing, because he was writing about something that was illegal. And so, you know, in Canada, like, we don't have bounties on our head. We're free to write, but we also don't have the same access to these mediums. So thankfully for digital media, you can get your story out, but now, like, it's a crowded space because everybody's on there and everybody's trying to get their story out. So how do you stand out? And if you don't have a certain following and you're comparing yourself to a celebrity with hundreds of millions, you're thinking, I'm not even going to try to get 100 million followers. So it becomes really challenging. So that forces me to be more creative, more innovative. And so some of the things I've done was a book signing at an optical store, a book signing at a Caribbean festival where there was thousands of people, hosting my own book signing, going to the, you know, local bookstores and doing these type of creative things. Or if I do a speaking engagement, I'll share some of my poetry. Then people in that audience like, oh, you have a book, right? So it's how can we be creative given the limited options we have with getting our story out to the masses?
That's exactly, thank you.
Yeah.
And Mutendei, you being somebody that's international and you're in Kenya, how do you find it for yourself getting your work out there? Being
kind of the same struggle. The difference is to find your audience, where they're at in terms of being able to access your book. What I've found is I've used a lot of my other writing, like blog posts and everything, to get public attention, and then use that as a basis to sell my book. The other flip side of it is I've realized that when you're trying to sell your book, people are not necessarily buying your book, but they're buying your character. So you have to kind of explain yourself, the journey you've had and how you relate to people. Because if you're, excuse me, if you're an asshole, they're not going to buy a book.
I have to sell a book.
So first and foremost, you have to be a peaceful person. You have to, just like we're doing here, you have to be willing to teach before you earn, that kind of thing. Right?
Yeah.
Big.
Yeah,
absolutely
big.
Church.
Yes, right? Like once you sow those seeds, and you're willing to invest in others and you put something out there, they will line up to invest in you. And I learned that from my mom too, right? You invest in others, you give back, and whether it's a book or a CD, you'll get that support from your community.
And the universe.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
Anybody have questions?
Also,
yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jameel.
I just want to piggyback off you guys' responses in terms of reaching your audience. It's always good to tap into other different things as well, you know, outside of just publishing, but like Mutendei says, you know, your character. It may not just be your book. Maybe you know how to cook. Maybe you know how to sew. Maybe you like to sing. Maybe you like to dance. But you can cross-brand and market those different things yourself. Maybe you can do what I did, right out of the theater. Show your visuals or YouTube. Show your YouTube on there. And it's in terms of investing to yourself. So I feel like if you really connect with your audience on many different levels, especially personal, and being transparent and vulnerable, you get that buy-in that way as well, because you know, people are really looking to become great. So in terms of finding your audience, what are you passionate about? What are your audience passionate about? Where do you find them? If you're into comics, I think you should spend a lot of your time, maybe your digital arts audience, maybe in colleges and universities or after school programs. There's many different ways that you can do it. And I think as far as me, I did a lot of free stuff. Starting off, I gave away a lot of free books, did a lot of free speaking engagements, free seminars. I did a lot of free stuff. And even to this day, I still give away free books and all that different type of stuff in exchange for reviews or photo ops and video ops. So when I share it online, then those other audiences that I haven't reached, they can go ahead and purchase it. So the main thing is just having fun through it all, you know. Don't beat yourself up about not getting a sale, not reaching your mark, but have fun in marketing, creating, shooting emails, teaching. And you know, that self-doubt can hinder you from success. So the main thing is, if you are doing it for money, you are doing it for the wrong reasons. And I say that because if money is your motivation, then what's your reward?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So
oh my goodness, Jameel.
so
right.
That's the main thing. You know, I know a lot of people think currency, you know, I need this money, but you can't be motivated by money, because money will be all that you see. And if you got money in your face, you can't go no further. But however, if you're motivated by many different things in life, on top of your books, on you being a parent, or, you know, you like to travel, you like to take colorful pictures, whatever you like to do, just share with your audience and let that be your motivation to receive your rewards, which will be the money in the end. You know,
and just to touch on and just to touch on that, your purpose, like, you notice when you're in your lane, like as writers, the gift, Stacey was touching on that, and she was talking about God and spirituality. There's a gift within you, there's purpose. Absolutely. And when you're doing what you align with in your path, the doors just open. And they open. Money has nothing to do with that. The universe, the Most High, the divine, the abundance will flow, and the path just keeps going.
Absolutely.
I have a quick question. I have a question from Mutendei.
Yes.
Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yes.
Okay. This is Olive Steele. In your presentation, you talked a lot, you referenced movies. I wondered whether or not you had any book of history that you could recommend for reading. I read a lot.
Sorry, I didn't catch the last part.
No, I was saying I'm an avid reader also. And in your presentation, you made reference to movies in your history presentation. And I wanted to know if you had any recommendations for books that I can purchase.
So would these be books to just to read, or books to help develop skill and be a resource?
General reading. Books for general reading. As an author, I read a lot, and I know that your reference was movies. You talked a lot about different movies and characters in different movies, stuff like that. But I read a lot, so I was wondering if you had any recommendation, if you could, recommend any books that you've read along those lines.
Yes, I can recommend a couple. So just from what I focus on, being fictional history, a lot of my work has to do with mythology. So there's the Indian book. It's an excerpt from a religious text. So it's the Mahabharata. That will be very good in terms of helping you with world building. Covers a lot of drama, politics of conflict. Then there's a specific excerpt from that book called the Bhagavad Gita, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. And then look towards West Africa. There's the Epic of Sundiata of Mali. And then there's one other one about a female character. The name is escaping me. But once I get it, I'll send it to you directly. But there's quite a few. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
And I think there's another question in the chat box for you too, Mutendei.
Okay.
And it's from Angela. She says, you spoke at length regarding character development and genre skill set. During your writing process, do you start with the themes you would like your book to represent, or you start with building your characters who then build on the genre or the themes?
Funny enough, my ideas generate from all over the place, right? So you don't have to necessarily confine yourself to one starting point, because sometimes you can get the final vision and work backwards, right? So I really don't have a designated development path, but I just have these different platforms. So I know if I'm writing an action story, then I'm going to look at the environment and what journey the person would have taken to get to that point. And then this goes back to, I think, one of the earlier questions that Jameel asked about how to build a historical record, right? So you then go into what is the group culture of that person's workplace. So for example, if I'm writing a detective drama, what are the habits of detectives? If I'm writing a military drama, what are the habits of military people, male and female? So you kind of take a sociology aspect to it. If I'm writing a story about an individual, then why is that person an introvert, or what are the known reasons for someone being introverted or being a social pariah, right? Is it a period of life thing? Is it a teenager struggling, like the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why? So the young girl commits suicide. Is it because of peer pressure, bad relationship with boys? There's this whole variety of reasons. So don't necessarily fix yourself with one specific way to do it, but you can use many starting points. If you do experience a writer's block, one thing I do is if I'm writing a particular story, like I mentioned, so I'm writing a historical epic, and then I hit a roadblock, I'll just go and write about something totally different. I'll start writing about a romance or writing about a comedy, and then you might come across with cross-pollination. So when you're trying to write a comedy, a light bulb might go off and you can come back to your original story.
Nice.
I hope that answers
nice.
your question. Yeah.
All right, cool. So we getting ready to wrap up. We have room for one more question. I see Andre has something to say regarding sales and finding your niche. So Andre, you can present your question, sir. I think you're muted, Andre.
Good evening, everybody. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Okay, can you hear me?
Hi, Andre. Yes, we can hear you.
My name is Andre Simpson. I'm actually from Jamaica.
So, big up Jamaica.
Hi, Andrea. Big up. JA in the building. Big up Jamaica in the building.
Hope everyone is doing great. So just to piggyback on sales and purchasing and things of that nature, like I had to learn the hard way. For me, the whole social media route and have my book sold via Amazon online didn't work for me. Like what worked for me was actually like getting my physical copies, going out doing book signings, going to different offices, doctors' offices, dental offices, and just speaking to people, because I've definitely come to realize that persons will tend to support you more if they actually meet the author.
Right.
So like me sending out ads on social media, whatever, that didn't really work well for me. So I had to basically go to the streets to get it done. So that's my 2 cents on sales and things.
Point.
I do have a question for everyone though, because I tend to go through this issue, whereas I might be stagnant for like a couple months, can't write, can't create. So to everyone, I'm not sure who might want to answer or who can answer, but what do you guys do when that happens? Like when you're at a point to whereas you can't create anymore, or you're unable to create or write anymore? Like what's like a good way to go about getting over that hump?
All right, cool. So you speak. Oh, go ahead, Kamilah.
No,
sure,
go ahead.
All right, cool. So you. So are you speaking in terms of having writer's block, right?
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah, for the most part.
All right, writer's block. All right, cool. So that's great. that's a great question because we're just discussing that. So in terms of writing block, you know, your mind go to a process where you can't create, you can't do anything, you can't produce, and you're stuck. All right. So my suggestion will be to, you know, step outside of your comfort zone and try to explore different things. Maybe try new food. Maybe share your book with somebody at Starbucks or whatever coffee shop that you may have. But you really have to give yourself a mental break and then revisit it. Because if you keep trying to do it, you're gonna do nothing but stretch yourself out. So you have to get outside of your comfort zone, try many different things, take a trip, go play basketball, hiking, running, and go to nature, put your foot into the lake, breathe some fresh air, do something so you can allow those creative juices to come into you. So I feel that we need to incorporate living things within inside our body, plants, fruits, vegetables, alkaline water, something like that. So something in your environment we are creating can be blocking that flow of creativity. So we need to put some live food in our bodies because live food gives us information. They are packed with so much information they can be creative. And then as long as we are, you know, sharing our thoughts and ideas with people, you know, we can get back on our creative track. Also, when we share the project where we are working with other people who may be an avid reader or somebody may be in your niche or in your genre, they may give you new inspiration to continue producing your story. So that's what I have.
Nice.
For me, I agree with everything Jameel said, of course. So in addition to that, just reading the stories of others. So sometimes we want to write, but then sometimes just get lost in reading the stories of others or rereading a book that made you fall in love with reading. And of course, nature, going for those walks will spark inspiration, you know, listening to the stories of others and then connecting to your why, right? Like, why do you want to write? Is it to write? Is it to inform? Is it to entertain? Is it to impact something? Is it for a cause greater than yourself? What is it? So once you find your why and your motivation, and don't focus on the sales, but it will really open a lot of wonderful inspiration.
Absolutely. Thank you, Stacey.
The only thing I would add, and this is something I've started doing recently, I think Jameel had also mentioned this earlier, is you're writing a book, but it may not be intended to be a book. So you may actually find that you have an idea for a book, but it's better as a script, or you have an idea for a book is better as a comic. So don't necessarily limit yourself to just doing the book, thinking of, okay, if I'm at a block here, with what I already have, can I transform it into something else and let it get a life of its own, right?
That's a great perspective as well.
It is, yeah.
Because I know a lot of my books came from maybe just a poem or a thought, or you know, or I have this book or this poem, and I want to turn it to a video, or like you said, like a script or something like that. So the main thing is, like Martin Luther King, just keep going. You know,
that's right.
Even if you're just keep going. You know, even if your writing goal is, let's say your writing goal is to write a page a day. If you can't get a page a day, maybe you got a sentence, maybe you got a paragraph. You know, maybe you might squeeze out 3 pages, whatever. But the main thing is just keep going. If you got a couple of letters or a couple of words, but the idea is just to keep going and see where it leads. You know, sometimes, you know, it can be stressful with the process of getting your flow and your narrative together. So sometimes, you know, you got to take a break from it and you come back and revisit it, or switch lanes, or read somebody else's work, or watch a film, or go to a comedy show. Something somewhere is going to give you inspiration to keep going.
Just had one comment. Now with all the restrictions and social distancing, you know, a couple of years ago, it was easy to, let's say, make an appointment at a bookstore, and you go in there and you show your book and you chat with people who come to the bookstore. We don't have those opportunities now to physically engage with people. So for me, it's quite challenging to try to sell. And, you know, with the noise online, everybody's trying to do something online. It is quite challenging to promote yourself online. So does anyone have anything to to share successful ways to promote online. Last year I did little events online. I advertised on Instagram, Facebook, just to try and bring people to my online book launches that are not too successful, but I did try, you know, like for 2 months doing a book reading every Saturday evening and things like that, because, well, you know, it's just the only way I could think of to bring people to me and my books.
Right.
But anybody wants to add anything?
Yes, I do find that doing book clubs, also if you decide to do giveaways, I find that that can also bring an audience to you as well. If you decide to host an online event, because we're in the virtual world, to bring readers to your book, and maybe decide in that online event, you decide to give away a book to one of the people that decide to watch, and you could do a reading as well. And maybe, you know, maybe host your own book club and feature your book in there. There's many different ways, you know, to get people to engage into your work.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kamilah. Yeah, so the main thing is just being creative. Just figure out different ways to be creative online. People love pictures, they love videos, they love things that are all colorful. They love music. So if you could tie your literature into smooth jazz or something that can draw them in a creative way. Also, you can look up Amazon Author Insights. They have a lot of information on how you can get into virtual book fairs or book expos. Same thing with Ingram Spark. Ingram Spark has a lot of resources for getting your book out there virtually. Facebook community groups, that's a new thing. They have, there's so many different things you got to do, but the main thing is just being creative and staying consistent. That's what pretty much you got to do, being creative with your videos and just color your story. And hopefully when this pandemic precedes us, we can go back to the original way of doing things and meet people in person. So the main thing, just stick to it and just have fun, do it. Just be as creative as you possibly can. Continue your social media ads if you haven't done so already. Run those and figure out, they got automatic placements on there and they can reach certain different audiences and whatnot. And then if you do give out giveaways, like Kamilah said, then have those recipients do video feedback for you in exchange for a free copy. Take photo ops and email it to their friends, and just the opportunities are endless, but authors, Amazon Author Insights, Ingram Spark, they have an array of information that you can use. They even Ingram Spark has a community on Facebook that you can join, and they're the author community, publishing community, and it's really a lot out there that can help you out. But the main thing is just being consistent, getting outside of your comfort zone and just giving it all you got,
Being consistent, that's the hard part, because sometimes you kind of lose hope and you just kind of relax and say, oh, it's not working. That's what has happened, because I tried a lot of different things and nothing much happened. So I kind of relaxed for like 3 months, but I need to get back on track.
That's right.
One trick I use, and it kind of serves double purpose, because I use it to test the reaction of the audience to any idea I have. So whenever I'm developing an idea for a book, I'll put it up as a blog post on my website or a Facebook page. Then I take that link, put it in a WhatsApp broadcast link with everyone you've interacted with and added to the broadcast list, and send it out. And so they automatically get access to your website or your Facebook profile where the story is without having to go browse for it themselves. It makes it easier for them. And then you can get instant feedback. So you're also maintaining the engagement with your audience. And then that's one thing that I found, where if you're not getting traffic necessarily on the website or your social media, do a broadcast list. And that for me has been making up the difference. And then getting direct feedback on your story idea.
All right, sounds good. Good. So I want to go ahead and wrap us up and close us out. We want to thank each and every one of you for joining us this afternoon. I hope we exceeded your expectations. If you have further questions, feel free to reach out to us individually, or you can email your questions and concerns or any other thoughts to kayapublishing@gmail.com. I want to thank Mutendei Writes, Stacey Ann Berry, Kamilah Haywood, myself, Elevated Ways Publishing, Mutendei Writes, Stacey Robinson, Kaya Publishing, everybody. Just want to thank you all for your contribution and for being here today. You all were amazing, and I hope you continue to follow our journey, and we look forward to seeing what you produce, and hopefully we can help you all reach, your historical moment as well someday.
Awesome, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for a great event.
Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone, have a good
All
night.
right, bye.
Right.